based in Luxembourg? Quite simply, why? Olivier.
Well, it was pretty natural for us because we were at the start in 2016 an initiative that was incubated within a Luxembourg well-known player, which is the Luxembourg Stock Exchange, together with a subsidiary that I was heading, which was Fund Square at that time, and basically very natural for us to grow basically in Luxembourg. But there are many other aspects, obviously, that are interesting and important for us, which is, I mean, I don't need probably to remind that Luxembourg is the second largest fund center, and we are active in fund distribution in the world, right after the US. So certainly the ecosystem around the fund industry was really important for us. Another aspect was the international aspect, because you cannot build a Luxembourg market, basically. It's an international market that you're building out of Luxembourg with a global reach. And also, I mean, I have to admit, the proximity with the government, the regulator, and also the favorable regulatory framework, especially when we talk about blockchain, was something definitely important for us. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really interesting that you, by definition, you have to go global from day one in Luxembourg. And I think as an investor, we're just looking for companies that are global. We don't want local winners, we want global winners. And so that's a really interesting, just in the DNA of every company here, which is very, very interesting. Luc, tell us, I mean, obviously Joachim talked about DeFi. I mean, that's heavily in your space. Tell us why you're here.
So indeed, in our case, it was a bit different because we could have set up the company anywhere. We were entrepreneurs who just sold the company, and we were like, okay, where should be our next venture? It was 2017, the crypto boom, the first crypto boom, but we wanted to do serious things. We wanted to do financial instruments. So we are like, okay, what are the main financial centers in the world? We hesitated with Singapore, and we realized Luxembourg is actually the best place to issue securities, and we wanted to tokenize securities. And I agree that Luxembourg, it is the center of the world on the map. This morning I started at 8 a.m. with some people in Singapore, and I will finish at 7 p.m. with people in San Francisco. So that's a fact. And yeah, in Luxembourg you have 3,000 funds, something like this, managing 6 trillion euros of assets, almost. Exaggerating a bit, but it's almost this. So you have all of the expertise, and for clients issuing new securities, it's a serious place to do it, where you have the right framework, legally speaking, but also now about blockchain, because we have very advanced blockchain regulations in Luxembourg.
Great. Okay, it's actually 5.9 trillion. But now GP Bullhands here will push you through 6, so yes, don't worry about that. Michele, tell us about how you're trying to help this then. What initiatives are you working on at your level?
So I can only confirm, first of all, what the entrepreneurs said, but really Luxembourg is in the center of the world, but is really in the center of Europe, and is a hub for startups to develop into Europe. A hub not only geographically in the center of Europe, but also politically, because we were one of the founding members of the EU, and there is this strong link by EU institutions being here, and so being able to speak also at EU level with the right people. High-performance computing is, for example, an example. But what have we tried to do and what are we succeeding in doing in the Luxembourg ecosystem over the past 10 years? Really, the number of startups has continued to increase. The latest mapping from Lux Innovation shows around 500 startups, tech startups now active in Luxembourg. Around 15 incubators, most of them private. This is very interesting because our input from the government really to develop this tech-driven ecosystem has really been taken over and supported by the private actors in different sectors, being fintech, ICT, or others. What we are doing at the ministry is really to, first of all, try to be in contact as much as possible with the startups. I think this proximity, both with corporate decision makers, but also with public institutions, startups are able to discuss with us and to quickly get to the right person in Luxembourg is one of the key advantages. What we're doing is also building a stream of initiatives that help startups from early stage. We have built accelerators like the Fit for Start that every 6 months are bringing companies from all over the world to get accelerated through Luxembourg. And of course, financing. We're participating in seed funds, in the Luxembourg Future Fund, as Ghislain just mentioned before, because we believe that is this inclusive ecosystem and very connected ecosystem that will make the difference. And of course, helping also companies go abroad and internationally, because as you mentioned, Luxembourg is this hub for companies to build a multicultural team. On average, a Luxembourg resident speaks 3.5 languages. How important is it to build a team from the beginning, which is multicultural, multilingual, to be able to address a few of the European markets straight away from Luxembourg? So this, I think, are a few of the advantages of Luxembourg, why startups should start their business or develop their European business from Luxembourg, but also the support that we're continuously giving, both technology-wise, because we are focused on developing a sustainable data economy in Luxembourg, and our investments in digital infrastructure prove it. But also, and I will stop here.
I'll stop you there. No, but I'm very impressed with about 3.5 languages per person.
Indeed.
I mean, that's about 3 languages more than I speak.
And we all know how the team is at the center of those startups.
Yeah.
And so we're here to support startups. This, I think, is the message on our side.
Yeah, definitely. So Ghislain, we know blockchain. We know this is a hub for blockchain now. There are some other initiatives, other sectors within tech that are being developed here. Tell us about a few of those.
For sure. I think overall, and I think you heard it from Michele, that there's a support for tech in general. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned blockchain, because that's quite a recent focus, and because blockchain overall is more recent. Historically, if I have to look at what we've done, the 3 pillars when we launched the LFF together with the government in particular was around fintech, and that's because of the obvious synergies with the local ecosystem. I mean, second largest country in the world for asset under management, but also a lot of structures, banking system, and so on. The second one was cybersecurity. And this is also because of the synergies towards fintech, but also because there was sort of a frontier market at the time. I think it's an obvious choice now, and we see more and more specialist funds around that, but that was a bold choice. And space, which might seem a bit surprising for a small country, in the center of Europe, physically centered, that's correct. But actually the space effort in Luxembourg originates from the 80s. If you think SES here was launched in 1985, so there was an early bet taken by the government and the LFF, but also the government initiatives were really focused at that. We've done a number of investments, and I think in there, recently developing the new space, and we discussed, I think, with a few of the people here, about space situational awareness, Earth observation, and how we invest. We like that it's less capital intensive. So for a country like Luxembourg, it makes more sense, than larger countries. But that it's actually the infrastructure from nanosatellites, microsatellites, and so on can be used from the data angle then for a lot of software and applications. And that's something we liked a lot. Now going forward, indeed, in addition to these, I think the blockchain angle is very important, and Luxembourg is really at the forefront. We are trying to develop that both from the fund aspect, that Fabric is active here, but also from the startup angle. I would say, if I had to say 2 other sectors that we'll see focus, I think logistics and supply chain is an important one, and that's both from the history here as well. I mean, you have a huge cargo airport here, so that makes a lot of sense, but also the central geography, the location in Europe. And probably like data and AI, machine learning, so data analytics, AI, and so on. If you look, Luxembourg has one of the best supercomputer in the world. Meluxina was open, I think it was last year. So there's a lot going on in there, and then it's all the application from that to the other sectors. What I would like, and going forward in our collaboration, and I think that resonates also with the government, is that we go also into the sustainability, both so environmental sustainability, environmental impact, and maybe also social impact at some point. I think that's also interesting themes.
Yeah, I think there are themes coming down from the government, and there's a full commitment around that, which is very impressive. Of course, technology is all well and good, but what you need is people to build companies. And so, Nazir, we had a great conversation yesterday about this. You and I are both from London. Obviously, London's cool, and I don't always think that Luxembourg is. But then when I started looking into it, I thought, obviously in London, you can't get a mobile phone signal. You can't buy a house. You can't travel anywhere because the traffic is terrible and the infrastructure is broken. But actually, Luxembourg has got some really interesting advantages. So you're a well-traveled individual, lived in lots of cities. Why did you end up here, and why would you say this is a great place to build a family and a life?
Thank you. Yeah, so I've lived and worked in 9 countries now. I mean, I was in banking before, so I did the obvious: London, Tokyo, New York, Singapore. As an entrepreneur, I've been in London, Brussels, Berlin, Bali, and here. And I did come here actually, like these gentlemen, to set up a company. I just launched a bank in Germany, Solaris Bank, and I came here to build a digital custody bank. And it just truly amazes me, the proximity of the people and the can-do attitude. You see this logo on the planes, you see it all over the city, you see it on the side of the bridge. Let's make it happen. There is an agility here which makes it a bit like a startup, an agility which is very appealing to me, to be able to make things happen within that framework. And lo and behold, within about 6 months of me being here, I'm sat in front of the Minister of Finance, and he's asking me to set up the Loft Foundation. And obviously you don't say no to a Minister of Finance. So that's how I ended up setting up and building the Loft. But around that, as I say, I've been here I will be here 6 years next month. It's the longest I've lived in any country in 30 years now. And I call this home. They haven't given me a passport yet, but I hope they will. I am a complete dilettante with any language. I speak English and I sit in the heart of Europe. Now, I don't say I'm incredibly embarrassed by that. But on the flip side, that's a tremendous advantage when it comes to international business. And you've heard that point. You have to be international. And the scalability that Luxembourg provides is incredible. When I go around the world and I'm talking to firms that are potentially looking at setting up European operations, be it San Francisco, be it Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Middle East, Dubai. I mean, in most of those meetings, particularly with larger tech firms, maybe, but any tech firm, you'll have a lawyer sitting there, right? And this is just one silly little example. And to be able to tell the lawyer that they can write their contracts in English is a big deal, right? To be able to apply for regulation in English, to be able to do business in English is a huge deal. And, my ex-wife was French, but I still can't do it. It's terrible. But unfortunately here, as soon as people figure out I'm English, they start talking English to me. And if anything, the capacity of English just continues to increase, and I think Brexit's had a huge impact on that. Plus, quality of life, look at the beautiful weather, and look at this, it's amazing. It's like this every single day, I'm telling you. Yeah.
My God, that's amazing, yeah.
Honestly. It's barbecue season all the time here. It's a lovely place to live. The pace of life is fast and hectic and progressive, and with this sense of wanting to get things done and the sense of being able to achieve things. But, I love London. I love great cities. I love New York. New York, when I was a 20-something-year-old, was a fantastic place to be. I love Berlin. But I don't want to live in any of them anymore. I love being able to visit them. I mean, I can get to London faster from here than most people commute to central London. I think it takes me about 2 hours door to door, pretty much, which is not bad, right? Yeah. And I can pop over whenever I want, but living here, that's something very special.
Yeah, the wages are high as well. And you told me yesterday that bus drivers in Luxembourg get paid 80,000 a year. So I'm obviously in the wrong industry myself. So, I mean, there's all these wonderful things. Is there anything missing in this ecosystem, or is there anything that needs to be improved, do you think? I'll open it out to the panel. Anybody, any feelings on that?
Okay, maybe I start on this one from the EIS perspective, of having seen several ecosystems emerging. I would see one maybe more peculiar or specific to Luxembourg than which is more Luxembourg focused. I think the one on the ecosystem is unfortunately, and it will be coming, is having a major success. I mean, there was Skype, but actually, if you look at the Skype mafia, it benefited other countries. And that was because, Luxembourg is very international, business model very international, and then the people were actually going back. So in Estonia, if you look at what the former Skype employees did, it's incredible. And I think the next success story in Luxembourg that will bring that would be very benefiting the ecosystem. So to bring a network of business angels, potentially mentoring, but also, I would say, eager entrepreneurs willing to have their own success and replicate that. I think that's the one side. Then the more Luxembourgish, and sorry for saying that, but is really about, I think the cost of living at some point, will be something that needs to be addressed to be able to attract talents. Because here, if you look in the industry, I mean, the salaries are very high. You mentioned that. So how do you convince someone to join a startup and work for equity when you can have a nice salary, and especially when you see then the cost of real estate and so on. So that's.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's about vision as well, and the reason why they are joining, and probably the leadership that some of the entrepreneurs, I hope, are bringing to these people that I think are pretty convincing, even for a lower salary versus also equities. So I think, I mean, Luxembourg, even if I think like any country, we are struggling sometimes to recruit the right talent. I mean, we have a good advantage to join Nazir. I mean, that people like to come to Luxembourg, basically live here and work for startups or fintechs. So that's clearly an advantage. But yeah, I mean, you need to complement that sometimes with other setup. But attracting talent is not probably less of a struggle in Luxembourg than elsewhere. So that's something we enjoy. But what is missing is pretty something that I probably want to mention, and with all the respect of the investment you are doing, but sometimes we are lacking investors and risk takers, really, in terms of putting the right level of money sometimes on and betting really on certain startups and fintechs. I think, and it's not Luxembourg only, but Europe in general, where I think we are versus the US or even Asia, still a bit doing investment, but drop by drop, not too much.
We talked about this yesterday. Right. The institutional environment in Europe really needs to step up. The pension funds, the state funds, and start investing in this space. Right? It's a road we could go down as a conversation, which we probably won't. But Nazir,
I was just going to make a little comment. I think yes, this problem is in Luxembourg, but it's a European problem. And our team at the Loft, we've helped firms raise around 450 million over the past 4 or 5 years. Now, I mean, I'm not going to act as an investment banker, but we do understand from our experiences, myself included, in investing in firms, about how to go about what are VCs looking for. We've built a very good network across the European Union and further afield. VCs are in the business of finding good companies, so we present them good companies, and good companies get funded. I think the bigger issue actually still relates to early stage funding. There are very few countries, I think, in Europe that have solved that problem. Within fintech specifically, given that you typically are dealing with longer times to cash, so you often need some intermittent rounds and to cash and capital to go on a bit further. It's a tricky one. And I mean, we talk about cost of living in Luxembourg. House prices have gone up here, but house prices have gone up everywhere in Europe. And when you have a relatively low risk asset with high returns compared to a high risk asset with high returns, it's a difficult paradigm to get people to put money into startups. And I think broadly, European Union has to look at that, but also on the flip side, my bigger concern is also around commercialization of intellectual property and R&D in Europe, which is, I think, where we're losing the battle with the US and with Asia. We don't do it effectively, and we have better research institutions, more researchers, and potentially, therefore, better commercial intellectual property than anywhere else. But we're leaking it out, and we're losing it. And going back to your point about big companies, I mean, Europe has only produced $200 billion companies in the past 50 years, right? I mean, that's saying a lot. So it's more of a bigger issue. Luxembourg tries its best, and I think we do a good job in that.
Maybe my side, joining some of the comments there. I think at European level, the idea of having more unicorns, having more scale-ups. I represent Luxembourg at the European Innovation Council, and this is one of the topics that comes back regularly, and where I think there is now an ambition from Europe to really go further. And indeed, this creates this pool of entrepreneurs that have reached this 1 billion companies target, and that can really spread the knowledge, but also their team can really create other startups and get into this cycle. Coming back to Luxembourg, I think the growth of the ecosystem has been spectacular over the past 10 years. Luxembourg has a certain size, and I think we have to focus on very high quality startups, as at the same time increasing the volume of startups. But what I think is very important is now that we have this vibrant ecosystem, that we really put all our efforts together to promote it internationally. And that's why I thank you very much for this kind of events, because I think we have already amazing companies in Luxembourg, in fintechs, on specific platforms in space that are growing exceptionally. And this is why also at governmental level, we have created Startup Luxembourg, which is a unified platform that really represents the brand of the ecosystem. It's an inclusive brand where all the players can join, and that we are already using to represent Luxembourg in all big events, Web Summit, Slush, and many others. And this, I think, is really where the whole ecosystem, and of course, we are there to support, should push forward in the next few years to get Luxembourg even more recognized, and those entrepreneurs more recognized at European, at international level, and it will help, of course, also expand their business internationally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, there's definitely something, as I say, going on here. There's something really amazing about this ecosystem. And GP Bullhound is here now to help, with events, with advisory, with our great investment teams, But Luc, maybe just finishing up with you, you're the entrepreneur as well as Olivier. What do you need going forward to create, a global champion?
We need to reach the decision makers, because Luxembourg is the back office for finance. A lot of things are happening here. A lot of people are working hard to make it happen. But the decision makers are usually somewhere else, in London, in Paris, in other financial centers. So even when a lot of people are convinced here that we can help by opening this new infrastructure, which is the blockchain, we still need some decision makers to take this strategic bet, so to make sure it goes up to this kind of persons.
Okay. So there's still work to do. All the pieces are in place, and it's just getting it to where it needs to be.
Yes, but I think it's in progress, because more and more everything is digital. So more and more the needs are obvious, becomes really obvious. Mm-hmm. And now it's about cost efficiency. It's about more liquidity for investors. So it's about education, and more the decision makers are listening their own teams and not only clients. So it is happening step by step, but we can feel sometimes that it's good to show a solution in Luxembourg, but we need to reach decision makers in other financial centers.
Excellent. Well, thank you, panel. That was really, really amazing. I've learned so much about Luxembourg from you all in the last week, and I feel very, very positive about it. Thank you to everybody that's come today. I mean, I must say, for those of you at home, we had an absolute full house. There are people out into the bar area. We had so many people turn up. So I think it shows the support that everybody here is giving to this ecosystem and how much everyone wants it to succeed. So for the entrepreneurs online, I know there's a few hundred of you, look into what's going on here. I think this is a great place. Speak to us, speak to these wonderful people. And we're here for the duration. So thank you for joining us, and thank you and good afternoon.